I keep a photograph of the four of them on my desk. Not together. They never met. Four separate photographs. Tommy Crane, Stephen Ward, Ray Pelham, Carl Inman. Four men who built empires with money I gave them. None of them have spoken my name in public since March 1991. I understand why. I'm not sure understanding makes it lighter. This is High Junk, Episode 4. In March 1983, Malkin Capital Partners structured a £180 million high-yield bond issue for Continental Cable News Holdings. The bonds were rated B-. Investment-grade firms would not touch them. We placed the entire issue in 11 days. The financing enabled Thomas Crane, Tommy, to launch a 24-hour news broadcasting operation, something that had never been done in Britain, something everyone said was impossible. CCN launched on April 14, 1983. It reached 8 million households in its first year. It currently reaches 74 million. In September 1984, we structured a £340 million bond issue for Ward Hospitality Group. Stephen Ward needed the capital to begin construction of the Meridian, a 3,400-room hotel and casino complex in Clark County, Nevada. The bonds were rated CCC, high risk, high yield. We placed them in 6 weeks. The Meridian opened in November 1989, 6 years of construction. Every contractor paid. Every deadline hit. It generated £1.1 billion in revenue in its first full year of operation. In February 1985, we structured a £1.2 billion bond issue, enabling Raymond Pelham to acquire Revelle International in a hostile takeover. Revelle management contested the acquisition for 11 months. Lawsuits, proxy battles, full-page advertisements in the Financial Times calling Pelham a corporate raider. Pelham prevailed. Revelle was sold in 2003 for £6.8 billion. In August 1985, we structured a £680 million bond issue, enabling Carl Inman to acquire a controlling stake in TCA Airways. TCA was losing £40 million a year. Inman restructured it over 36 months. Route cuts, labor negotiations, fleet modernization. The airline returned to profitability in 1988. It was acquired by a European carrier in 2001 for £2.1 billion. Total Malkin capital fees across the 4 transactions, £84 million. Total value created for clients, £11.4 billion. I have not spoken to any of them since March 1991. The mathematics of 1983 to 1986 are simple. 4 transactions, 4 impossibilities. 4 men who were told by every investment-grade firm in London and New York that what they wanted to do could not be financed. We financed it. The method was always the same. A company with vision but no credit rating. A founder with a plan but no access to capital. A transaction that looked reckless on paper but made perfect sense if you understood what was actually being built. We would structure the bonds, price them at 13, 14, sometimes 16%. High yield, high risk. We would explain to investors exactly what they were buying. Not investment-grade certainty, not blue-chip safety. An engineered bet on a specific person building a specific thing with a specific timeline. The investors understood. They bought the bonds because they trusted our analysis, because we had never placed a bond that defaulted, because high yield meant high return, and they were willing to carry the risk. Tommy Crane called me in February 1983. I had never met him. He had been referred by someone at Salomon Brothers who knew I worked in high yield. He wanted to build a 24-hour news network. Not highlights, not scheduled bulletins, continuous news, live coverage, reporters in every major city, a control room that never went dark. He had secured a satellite transponder lease. He had hired 40 journalists. He had studio space in Camden. He had £3 million in equity. He needed £180 million. I asked him why he thought it would work. He said, because news doesn't stop at 10 o'clock. I asked him what happened if viewership didn't materialize. He said, it will materialize because people are tired of waiting for news to be delivered to them. They want it when it happens. I believed him. We structured the issue in 3 weeks, priced the bonds at 14%, placed them in 11 days. CCN launched on April 14th. I watched the first broadcast on a television in my Beverly Hills office. I was alone. I had structured the financing. I had priced the bonds. I had sold investors on a bet that continuous news broadcasting would find an audience large enough to service high-yield debt. I had never met a journalist, never visited a television studio, never fully understood what 24-hour news would mean. I watched the first hour. A plane crash in Munich. A political scandal in Westminster. A market report from Tokyo. Live. Uninterrupted. No waiting for the 10 o'clock bulletin. I understood it immediately. I called Tommy at 11 that night. He answered on the second ring. I could hear people in the background. Celebration. Relief. I said, "You did it." He said, "We did it." I said nothing. I put the phone down. I have thought about that phone call many times since. Not the words, the we. Stephen Ward was different. He did not want to change the world. He wanted to build the largest casino resort in Nevada and make a fortune doing it. I appreciated the clarity. He came to the London office in August 1984. Tall man, expensive suit, Texan accent. He laid architectural drawings across my desk. The Meridian, 3,400 rooms, 2 casinos, 14 restaurants, a theater, a shopping arcade, 3 swimming pools. He said, "I need £340 million. I said, "What do you have for collateral?" He said, "The land and a construction contract." I said, "That's not enough for a bank." He said, "I know, that's why I'm here." We structured the issue in September, priced the bonds at 15.5%. Ward fought me on the rate, said it was too high. I explained that 15.5% was the price of building something no bank would finance. He accepted it. We placed the bonds in 6 weeks. The Meridian opened in November 1989. I flew to Nevada for the opening. Ward was there, photographers, politicians, celebrities, a 20-minute fireworks display. Ward saw me across the lobby. He nodded. I nodded back. We did not speak. I flew back to London the next morning. Ray Pelham was the most difficult. Not because the transaction was complex, because Pelham himself was complicated. He wanted to acquire Revelle International, a cosmetics company, profitable, well-managed, no interest in being acquired. Pelham did not care. He believed Revelle was undervalued. He believed he could run it better. He believed the management was too conservative and the board too comfortable. He was right. We met in February 1985. He was already in a fight with Revelle. He had made an offer. They had rejected it. He had gone public with his intentions. They had called him a corporate raider in the Financial Times. He needed £1.2 billion to acquire enough shares to force a sale. I asked him if he understood what hostile meant. He said, "It means they don't want to sell and I'm buying anyway." I said, "It means lawsuits, proxy fights, reputational damage." He said, "I know." I said, "Do you have £1.2 billion?" He said, "Not yet." We structured the issue in March. £1.2 billion in bonds, rated B, priced at 16%, the highest rate we had ever charged. Pelham fought me again, said 16% was extortion. I said, 16% is the price of a hostile takeover financed through high-yield debt. If you want a better rate, wait until Revelle agrees to sell. He placed the bonds. The acquisition was contested for 11 months. Revelle management sued, claimed Pelham was acting in bad faith, claimed the acquisition would destroy shareholder value, claimed he was a raider with no experience in cosmetics. Pelham won every case. The acquisition closed in January 1986. Revelle was sold in 2003 for £6.8 billion. Carl Inman was quiet. He did not want to build an empire. He did not want to fight management. He wanted to save an airline. TCA Airways, a regional carrier, 40-year history, losing £40 million a year. Management had no plan. The board had no options. The company was 18 months from bankruptcy. Inman believed it could be saved. We met in July 1985. He had worked for TCA in the 1970s. Route planning, operations. He had left to work for a larger airline. He had saved money. He wanted to buy TCA, restructure it, save the jobs. I asked him how many jobs. He said 4,300. I asked him how much he needed. He said £680 million. We structured the issue in August, rated CCC, priced at 15%. Inman did not fight the rate. He understood the mathematics. A struggling airline financed through junk bonds was one mechanical failure away from default. He took the risk anyway. We placed the bonds in 5 weeks. Inman restructured TCA over 36 months. Route cuts, labor negotiations, fleet modernization. It was slow. It was painful. It worked. TCA returned to profitability in 1988. It was acquired in 2001 for £2.1 billion. 4,300 jobs were saved. I keep a file in the third drawer of this desk. Annual reports, press clippings, transaction summaries. CCN reaches 74 million households. The Meridian generates over £2 billion in revenue every year. Revelle is now part of a global consumer goods company worth £18 billion. TCA no longer exists as a separate entity, but the routes Inman saved still operate under a different name. 4 empires, 4 men, £11.4 billion in value created. I financed all of it. I built none of it. Tommy Crane was interviewed by the Financial Times in 2006, 23 years after CCN launched. The journalist asked him how he financed the network. Crane said he raised capital through bond issuance. The journalist asked who structured the bonds. Crane said he didn't recall the specific firm. I read that interview in my office in Tottenham. I put the paper down. I understood. Stephen Ward published a memoir in 2009. 340 pages. The Meridian. The construction. The opening. The first decade of operation. My name does not appear in the book. I bought a copy. I read it in one sitting. I put it in the drawer. Ray Pelham gave a lecture at Harvard Business School in 2011. The Revelle acquisition. Hostile takeovers. Value creation. A student asked how he financed the deal. Pelham said he used leverage. The The student asked what kind of leverage. Pelham said high-yield bonds. The student asked who issued them. Pelham moved to the next question. A colleague sent me the video. I watched it twice. I have not watched it again. Carl Inman died in 2014. The obituary in the Times mentioned his work at TCA, the restructuring, the turnaround, the jobs saved. It did not mention how he financed the acquisition. I went to the funeral. I sat in the back. I did not speak to anyone. I do not blame them. A man who pleads guilty to securities fraud is not a man you associate with publicly. He is not a man you mention in memoirs. He is not a name you recall when journalists ask how you built your empire. I understand the mathematics of reputation. But I think about Tommy's voice on the phone in 1983. We did it! I think about Stephen Ward nodding across the lobby of the Meridian, Ray Pelham moving to the next question, Carl Inman's obituary with my name absent. 4 men, 4 empires, £11.4 billion. I gave them the money when no one else would. They built something that outlasted the financing. I have been trying to decide for 30 years if that is enough. Daniel came to the Beverly Hills office once in 1986. He was 8 years old. I brought him in on a Saturday. The office was empty. I showed him my desk, my phone, the files. He asked what I did. I said I lent money to companies. He asked why. I said, because they need it and nobody else will lend it. He said, like a bank? I said, not like a bank. He said, then what? I did not have an answer. The foundation is the answer. 38 years later. £16 million given away. Housing projects, literacy programs, legal aid clinics. An attempt to show Daniel what I should have said that day. I am not sure he would accept it as an answer. I have not had the opportunity to find out. The 4 photographs are still on my desk. Tommy, Stephen, Ray, Carl. 4 men who built empires. 4 men who do not say my name. I keep them there anyway. Not because I need the reminder. Because I wonder if Daniel keeps a photograph too. Of the father who visited on alternate Saturdays. Who sent checks but not calls. Who built a foundation in his name but could not answer a simple question. I cannot ask him. He has not returned a message in 6 years. So I keep theirs instead. Tommy called once. 2003. He was in dispute with his partners. The casino was being investigated. There were accusations about the license application, false declarations, undisclosed associations. He wanted me to make a statement. That the original financing was legitimate. That I had vetted him properly. That there was nothing improper in our arrangement. All of which was true. He did not ask if I would do it. He told me he needed it by Friday. I said I would need to speak to my solicitor first. The line went quiet. Then he said, "Your solicitor." Not a question, a repetition. I said yes. He hung up. I did speak to my solicitor. He advised me that a statement was unnecessary, that I had no legal obligation, that it could expose me to scrutiny I did not need. I prepared the statement anyway. I sent it by courier on Thursday evening. Tommy did not acknowledge it. The investigation concluded 8 months later. No charges. The license was upheld. I sent a note. "Congratulations, if there is anything else you need." He never replied. Stephen was different. He invited me to the launch of his third channel in 2007, a breakfast network, live from 5 until 9. He sent a handwritten card. "Michael, would mean a great deal if you could be there. None of this without your belief at the beginning." I arrived early. The studio was full, advertisers, journalists, politicians. Stephen was in the center of it, holding court. He saw me. He smiled. He raised a hand. He did not come over. I waited 40 minutes. Then I left. He sent an email the next day. "Sorry we didn't get to speak properly. Chaos, as always. Let's do lunch soon." We never did lunch. Ray, I saw by accident. 2011. A restaurant in Mayfair. I was there with a client from Brussels. Ray was 3 tables away with his wife and another couple. I caught his eye. He nodded. A single movement of the head. Acknowledgement without warmth. I excused myself between courses. I walked to his table. I said, "Ray." He looked up. He said, "Michael, how are you?" Not a question, a statement shaped like one. I said, "Well, congratulations on the new line. Dubai to Sydney." He said, "Thank you." His wife looked at me. She did not know who I was. He did not introduce me. I stood there. 3 seconds, perhaps 4. Then I said, "Enjoy your evening." He said, "You too." I did not return to my table immediately. I stood in the corridor outside the toilets for 6 minutes. My client asked if I was unwell. I said I was fine. Carl never called, never wrote, never nodded across a restaurant. But I know he thinks of me. Because in 2015 his cosmetics company went public. The prospectus listed every significant investor from the company's history. 23 names. Mine was not among them. I checked 3 times. I had my assistant check. I had my accountant pull the original agreements. There was no error. I was simply not mentioned. It is not illegal. The loan was repaid in full in 1997. Technically, I had no ongoing stake. But every prospectus has a section for historical context. Acknowledgements, the people who made it possible. Carl chose not to include me there. I thought about calling him. I thought about it for 3 weeks. I did not call. Daniel asked me once why I did not have partners. He was 1492. We were having dinner, one of the alternate Saturdays. A restaurant he chose, Italian, too loud. He said, "Everyone at school talks about their parents' business partners. Do you have any?" I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I prefer to work alone." He said, "Is that why you and Mom split up?" I did not answer that. I changed the subject. I asked about his exams. He answered in single syllables for the rest of the meal. I have thought about that conversation many times. The way he connected the 2 things. Business and marriage. Isolation as method. He saw it before I did. The foundation was supposed to be different. I hired a director, Caroline, former civil servant, serious, committed. I gave her full authority. I told her, "I trust your judgment. You choose the projects. I will provide the funding." She said, "And what is your role?" I said to sign the checks. She said, "That's all? I said that is enough. She stayed 18 months. When she resigned, she said, "You don't actually want to help people, Michael. You want to be seen as someone who helps people. But you don't want to be involved. You don't want to meet them, hear their stories, see what the money does. You want the distance." She was right. I have had 4 directors since Caroline. They all leave for the same reason. I keep Daniel's name on the foundation because I want him to ask me about it. I want him to call and say, "What is this? Why my name?" I want the opening. He has not called. The 4 photographs are arrangements of power. Tommy with his hand on a roulette table. Stephen in a broadcasting booth. Ray standing beneath the tail of an aircraft. Carl holding a product bottle like a trophy. Professional photographs, taken for magazine profiles. I cut them out. I framed them myself. They are not expensive frames. People assume I keep them as proof, that I need evidence of what I built. That is not why they are there. They are there because I want to remember the choice I made. Not the choice to lend them money. The choice to believe that money was enough. That the transaction was the relationship. That I could remain invisible and still be necessary. Tommy needed my belief in him. Stephen needed my confidence. Ray needed my willingness to risk. Carl needed my patience. I gave them money instead. And when they succeeded, they kept the money and discarded the need. Daniel asked me what I did. I said I lent money. I should have said, I choose people. I should have said, I see something in them before others do. I should have said, I make them possible. But I could not say that. Because if I said that then, I was responsible for what they became. And I wanted the money to be responsible instead. The foundation is not an answer. It is the same mistake in different clothes. Daniel would see that immediately. Perhaps that is why I still hope he calls. Not to thank me. To tell me what I already know.